When my husband said it, he said it calmly, as if he were explaining a perfectly reasonable plan. He told me he and my stepdaughter would be spending the holidays with his ex because she deserved time with her real family. The word real stayed with me long after the conversation ended. I stood in the kitchen, nodding, listening to him explain how awkward it would be otherwise, how the child needed stability, how this was temporary. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I simply accepted it. That same night, I opened an email I had ignored for years. It was an offer for a transfer to another city, a promotion I had once dreamed of but always postponed for the sake of our marriage. I filled out the acceptance form slowly, deliberately, as if I were stepping into cold water. For years, I had centered my life around my husband's needs, his child's schedule, his unresolved past with his ex. I told myself this was love, that sacrifice was part of family. But standing alone in that quiet house, I realized how invisible I had become. The transfer meant leaving in 2 weeks. I packed nothing yet. I cooked dinner as usual. I laughed when my husband joked. I helped my stepdaughter with her homework, kissed her forehead goodnight, and wished them a happy holiday in advance. Inside, something was shifting. I wasn't angry, I was awake. The realization came gently but firmly: if I wasn't considered family now, I never truly had been. Accepting the transfer felt like choosing myself for the first time. I went to bed that night with a calm I hadn't felt in years, unaware of how quickly my quiet decision would unravel everything my husband believed was stable. The days that followed were surreal. My husband moved through the house with the confidence of someone who believed everything was under control. He talked about travel plans, about gifts he needed to buy for his daughter, about how grateful his ex was that he was being so understanding. He never asked how I felt. That absence of curiosity hurt more than any argument could have. I began preparing quietly. I gathered important documents, transferred money into a separate account, and told my employer I would be ready earlier if needed. At work, people congratulated me, unaware of the emotional earthquake behind my smile. At home, I became a ghost of my former self, present but no longer attached. The night before they were set to leave, my husband hugged me and thanked me for being mature about everything. Mature. As if my silence were a virtue rather than a wound. When they left the next morning, the house felt hollow but peaceful. I spent the day packing essentials and donating what I no longer needed. 3 days later, while I was finalizing housing arrangements in my new city, my phone rang. It was my husband. He was crying. Not the quiet kind, but the kind that steals breath and coherence. He told me he had come home early to surprise me and found the closet half empty. He asked where I was. When I told him I'd accepted the transfer and was leaving, he sounded genuinely shocked. He said he didn't think I'd actually go. That was the moment I understood how deeply he had underestimated me. His pain felt real, but so did my resolve. I told him I had needed to choose myself, just once. He begged me to wait, to talk, to reconsider. I listened, calmly, kindly, but something had already broken beyond repair. We met a week later to talk face to face. He looked exhausted, older somehow, as if the illusion of control had aged him overnight. He apologized repeatedly, saying he never meant to make me feel excluded. I asked him how else I was supposed to feel when he defined family in a way that left me out. He had no answer. He admitted he assumed I would always be there, that my patience was permanent. Hearing that hurt, but it also confirmed my choice. He said his ex had questioned why I wasn't around, why I hadn't protested. That irony wasn't lost on me. The woman he prioritized had noticed my absence before he had. We talked about the years I'd compromised, the plans I'd postponed, the emotional labor I'd carried quietly. He listened, finally, but listening too late doesn't undo damage. When he asked if there was any chance I'd come back, I told him I didn't know. It was the truth. I wasn't closing doors out of spite, I just needed space to understand who I was without constantly accommodating others. As I drove away, I felt grief, but not regret. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine. My new city was loud, unfamiliar, and liberating. I moved into a small apartment near my office and spent the first few nights sleeping on the floor, surrounded by boxes and possibility. Work consumed me in the best way. I was respected, challenged, and seen. Colleagues valued my input. For the first time in years, my identity wasn't tied to someone else's past. My husband called often at first, sometimes to apologize, sometimes just to hear my voice. Eventually, the calls slowed. He told me his daughter missed me, which twisted something in my chest. I missed her too. That loss was the hardest part. I had loved her without conditions, and walking away felt like another kind of sacrifice. But I reminded myself that staying had cost me my sense of self. I couldn't teach a child to value herself by modeling self-erasure. Slowly, I built routines. Morning coffee walks. Weekend markets. Evenings spent rediscovering hobbies I'd abandoned. The loneliness came and went, but it was honest loneliness, not the quiet isolation of being ignored in your own home. Months passed. I began to notice how much lighter I felt. I laughed more easily. I slept better. One evening, my husband showed up unexpectedly. He said he was in town for work but admitted he hoped to see me. We talked over dinner, cautiously. He told me therapy had forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about entitlement and emotional blindness. He said losing me had changed him. I believed he was sincere. But sincerity doesn't guarantee compatibility. He asked if I'd consider counseling together. I told him I appreciated the growth but couldn't promise reconciliation. I needed to protect the woman I had become. He understood, or at least he tried to. When he left, I felt sad but steady. Loving someone doesn't always mean returning to them. I began dating again, tentatively. Not because I needed someone, but because I wanted to experience connection without losing myself. I learned to set boundaries, to speak up, to leave when something didn't feel right. Each interaction taught me something new about my worth. My husband and I finalized our separation amicably. We agreed on contact regarding my stepdaughter, who I continued to support emotionally from a distance. That bond didn't disappear, even if the marriage did. I no longer saw my past as wasted time. It had shaped me, taught me resilience, clarified my needs. A year after the transfer, I was promoted again. Standing in my office, overlooking a city that once terrified me, I thought about the woman who had quietly accepted a transfer without argument. She had been braver than she knew. My ex-husband sent a message congratulating me. It was warm, respectful, and free of regret. That felt like closure. I realized the decision I made hadn't just changed my life, it had forced others to confront their assumptions. Silence, when paired with action, can be powerful. Looking back, I don't see myself as someone who was abandoned. I see myself as someone who chose differently. When my husband said his daughter deserved time with her real family, he unknowingly pushed me toward myself. The decision he triggered wasn't revenge or escape. It was awakening. I learned that love should never require invisibility, and family should never be defined in a way that erases you. I didn't leave loudly. I left honestly. And in doing so, I finally came home.